Manly Gallery.
Yeah.
How are you feeling at this point?
I feel a bit exhausted and drained. It was a lot of work, compressed from 3 years, and now it's up on the walls. Can't quite believe that I've done this much.
472
portraits.
72 portraits.
2 of myself, one which I did in 2006 when I first started, and then one at the end of 2008, and I thought I'd show both of them so you could see the difference in the way that I've painted. The one at first was a bit more naive, and then the second one, the one which I did at the end after I'd painted all the portraits, it was a bit more sophisticated. As I moved along, you do develop, but I tried to keep them as fresh and contemporary looking as I could, relating to the person that I took the photograph of.
Was the Nolan girl one that was done earlier on?
And a Nolan, she was done very early on, and hers is very broad. I sort of went over them as a whole, so it made up, as a body of work, it made up one complete painting, so the faces aren't meant to be seen individually, they're meant to be seen as one giant piece of work, one whole abstract work of faces, basically.
And there are so many, but which is your favourite?
Well, I think each painting has its own voice. I think each person has their own story, so I don't really have a favourite. I think every person and every painting has their own individual story about themselves, so I like to think that they all were in a balance with each other.
But is there one portrait that you wouldn't want to let go of?
I think the ones of my 2 children, they were very difficult to do. I found that...
You did them early on though, didn't you?
Yeah, they were quite early on. I found that when I painted people I knew well, it was much harder for me than the people that I didn't know very well. Have to worry about their personalities or have a whole lot of baggage that they might have. I just painted an image of what I saw, which is... and very flat. I think a lot of the paintings are very flat. They're not too detailed, but I think...
you really captured Ray Hughes' personality well.
Oh, thank you, Emily.
but you know him quite well, and you know his personality.
Well, I've got a feeling of what he's about, or that he's a heavyweight art person. And I think with each person, even if I didn't know them, I tried to get a sense or a feeling of them. Just by talking to somebody, you can pick up some sort of essence about them without having to know them particularly well. And not trying to second guess or work too hard. Just have an image in front of me that I could use as a springboard, really, to get each painting going.
Tell me about the process, how you approach people, and how did people treat you?
Well, I'd just go up and tell them I had a show that I was working on towards and I'd like to put them in it, documenting people who work in the visual arts from 2006 to 2008. I thought that if this had been done 50 years ago, it would make a very good document of the time. And most people, they just stood there and didn't really comment. They just let me I just took 2 photographs of everybody, and whatever I got in those 2 photographs is what I used.
Did any other high-profile artistic people, such as Robert Hughes, reject your...
Well, I would have probably taken 800 photographs altogether. I couldn't paint everybody I took a photograph of because I just basically ran out of time. No, most people were because they didn't know much about the work or what I was doing, they sort of just stood there and let me take their photograph. A few people said I'd like to see the images before, I'd like to see what you're doing, and when people said that to me, I didn't put them in the show. I thought I didn't want to show people what I was doing, basically.
Gosh.
I just wanted the work. I didn't want anyone to see it. So no one really saw it before it was up at the show.
Were there some people that you captured, that you painted, that you didn't include in the show?
I painted a whole lot of musicians which I kept out of the show because they're not really visual artists.
Oh, okay.
Mainly it's about visual arts people who work behind the scenes, or curators, dealers and conservators, people who work behind the scenes also, And of course artists.
And some of these artists that said that they wanted to see these paintings before they were exhibited,
Yeah.
if you were to paint them,
Yeah.
would have you perhaps liked to have painted them if they hadn't have said that?
Well, if I'd taken their photograph, I probably would have put them in the show. But because I had so many people that I could have put in, it didn't. If someone said no, it didn't worry me. I just moved on, basically. I mean, not many people said no. In fact, so few. I was surprised actually how many people I could put in the show.
Yeah, it's just extraordinary how many were on the wall. It was overwhelming.
Yeah.
There could have been a second room.
That'll be next time.
This is the first time you've painted figurative works.
Yeah.
And
well, apart from I have done small still lives previously. I have done a few figurative works, but mainly I do abstract work. I like to break into form. I like shapes being. I see things as colour fields more than as in a figurative way. I find if I break into form, paintings then move. It never looks fixed. I find abstract.
Yeah, these works are quite fixed. These portraits, they are quite
very fixed.
It's
very
quite
fixed.
quite different
but
to
then
your.
I see it just as paint. I see it just as painting, as another form of painting. I don't split them up as figurative or non-figurative or abstract. I just see it as paint, as using paint. And I think there's a place for everything.
And some of them are really quite textured,
Yeah, most of
like
them.
your abstract works.
Yeah, I did build up the paint a lot. I think the faces, there is a lot of texture. I basically did build them up. I actually treated them like they're abstract work, really.
So-
abstract faces.
Yes, yes.
But then you can recognise.
But do you think that you'd ever include figures within your abstract paintings?
Well, but they wouldn't be as recognisable as that. It would be a shape of a figure. I find that more interesting to look at for me individually.
I'd find that quite interesting actually, to have a really quite fixed image of a portrait
Yeah.
within
Yeah.
one of your abstract pieces as a completely different style juxtaposed
Yes,
against each other.
yeah,
I think that would
yeah.
be really quite extraordinary.
Yeah. I like the idea of breaking into that known shape though. I like the idea because I find with an abstract work that it never looks the same twice. You look at it and then you look at it again and it looks different.
So for your next body of works,
Yeah.
what are you contemplating on having in hindsight, thinking about this show that's just this successful show that's just been?
I have sort of started doing my next body of work already. I like to do things on a big scale. I like to really stick at something and really build it up.
And would you like to do more portraits?
I'd like to try and do it in New York. I'd like to try and do something overseas if I could.
That's a wonderful idea. And to capture the New York art scene.
I'd like to try and do something like that over there if I could.
So what would be your dream?
Well, I'd like to replicate this over in New York if I could. Paint the visual arts people in other places, parts of the world, and do some abstract work and just do some art.